The slap smashed my cheek into damp towels. I smelled detergent and blood as my stepmother hissed about lazy freeloaders. But then Aunt Carol's voice cut in, cold and furious. "Why don't you try that on me instead?" I didn't know she'd brought more than soup. She'd brought documents, questions, and a plan to rip open 20 years of secrets. My name is Annabelle Ford. I am in my late 20s, and for the last 12 hours, I have been a nurse. Now, standing in my father's kitchen in the gray light of a 7 a.m. Tuesday, I am just a target. My scrubs are still on, the familiar smell of antiseptic hand gel clinging to the fibers, a stark contrast to the aggressive lemon polish scent Vivian favors. I am folding laundry. My body aches from the double shift, a dull throb behind my eyes that no amount of caffeine can touch. The washing machine is silent, but the dryer hums, tumbling a load of my father's pajamas and socks. I am here, back in my childhood home in suburban Ohio, because my father is upstairs, recovering from a triple bypass, and I am the only one qualified, or willing, to manage the complex post-operative care. Vivian Rowan, my stepmother, is hovering. She hasn't stopped hovering since I arrived 6 days ago. She drifts in on a cloud of expensive perfume, already dressed in cream-colored linen pants and a silk blouse, her hair perfect, her makeup a subtle mask of affluent disapproval. I pull one of Dad's flannel shirts from the basket, the soft, worn fabric familiar in my hands. I fold. "You know," Vivian says, her voice meticulously casual, "we really need to talk about the utility bills. Annabelle, this is the third load you've done since yesterday." I keep folding. My resentment is a low, simmering heat under my exhaustion. He's going through a lot of bed linens, Vivian, night sweats. It's normal after the surgery. I'm sure it is. She picks up one of my own t-shirts, holding it between two perfect fingers as if it's contaminated. "It's just that this house isn't a free laundromat. I know you're used to apartment living, but a house this size has significant overhead. I am not just using the house, I am monitoring vitals, managing a dozen different medications, flushing PICC lines, changing dressings, and convincing a proud, stubborn man to use a walker. I am doing this for free, while my own apartment in Columbus sits empty, my own bills piling up. But I don't say this. I haven't said any of it. I can pay for the water. Vivian, it's not a problem." I reach for another towel, but she steps in front of the basket, holding something up. It's a blouse, a pale blue, flimsy-looking thing. It is tiny. "And this?" she asks, her voice losing its casual edge and finding the sharp, brittle tone I know so well. "This was cashmere. This was a $200 blouse, and you've boiled it." I stare at the blouse. I don't recognize it. "I didn't wash that. It wasn't in my load. I only washed Dad's things and my scrubs." "Are you calling me a liar?" She shoves it toward my face. "It was in the basket. You clearly grabbed everything without looking. Like you always do. Careless. You're so careless. This is what you do. Annabelle, you just barge in and you ruin things." I know, with the certainty of years of this, that she put it there. She waited for me to start the machine, then tossed it in. A tiny, petty bomb waiting to detonate. The attack isn't about the blouse. It never is. Her words sharpen, turning classist and cruel. The insults she saves for when Dad is out of earshot. "You just don't understand quality. Do you? You can't. It's not in your makeup. You get that from your mother? Cheap blood. Always taking shortcuts. Always looking for a handout." My hands clench on a pair of my father's socks. "Leave my mother out of this." "Oh, did I touch a nerve?" Vivian laughs, a sound like broken glass. "She thought that just because she married your father, it made her something, but she was just a waitress from the wrong side of town. And you're exactly the same. You come in here with your dirt under your fingernails from that filthy hospital, and you expect to be treated like you own the place." I close my eyes. I breathe. In, hold, out, like I do with combative patients. The ones lost in dementia or withdrawal. The ones who scream and spit. Use a calm tone. Do not engage with the delusion. Maintain a safe distance. Vivian, I say, my voice low. I'm not fighting with you. I'm tired. I'm going to finish this, and then I'm going to sleep for a few hours before Dad wakes up. I try to step around her to get the last of the towels from the dryer, which has just clicked off, plunging the room into an unsettling quiet. She follows me. She moves faster than I expect, blocking my path, her face contorted. You don't walk away from me. You are a guest in this house. You are staff. You will apologize for ruining my clothes, and you will refold this entire basket properly. She jabs a finger into my shoulder, hard, right on the bone, properly, like staff would. And then, before I can even process the jab, her open hand cracks across my face. It happens in slow motion. The sound is shockingly loud, a sharp, wet smack that echoes in the sterile kitchen. The force of it snaps my head to the side, throwing me off balance. My hip smashes into the side of the wicker laundry basket. The world tilts. I stumble sideways, tripping over the basket I was trying to defend. I land hard on the cold tile floor. The basket tips with me, and the neatly folded towels, Dad's towels, the ones I just finished, explode across the floor in a cascade of white terry cloth. I instinctively curl away, my hand flying to my cheek. It's hot, stinging. My ear is ringing. I can smell the clean scent of the detergent from the towels scattered around me, and beneath it, the faint metallic tang of blood where my teeth cut the inside of my lip. I am stunned, not just by the pain, but by the icy realization that floods my system, colder than the tile beneath my palms. This isn't the first time Vivian has wanted to hit me. I've seen it in her eyes 100 times. The tightening of her jaw, the clenching of her fists. This is just the first time she's actually done it. The first time she's felt safe enough to do it. She stands over me, breathing hard, her hand still raised, her eyes glittering with a terrifying, triumphant rage. Before she can raise that hand again, a sharp, outraged voice cuts through the air. Vivian. The voice comes from the doorway. It's a voice I haven't heard in this house in years. Aunt Carol, my late mother's older sister, stands there. She has a reusable grocery bag in one hand, and her car keys still dangling from the other. She is the opposite of Vivian, all sharp angles, graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a practical raincoat and an expression of absolute fury. She drops the grocery bag on the counter with a thud. Soup containers rattle. If you're so eager to hit someone, Vivian, Aunt Carol says, her voice steady and lethal as she steps directly between me and my stepmother. Why don't you try that on me? The kitchen turns into a standoff. The three of us freeze. Vivian flushes, a blotchy red that crawls up her neck, her mask of perfection shattering. Carol, Vivian sputters, trying to regain control, to rewrite the scene. This isn't what it looks like. She's overtired. She overreacted and she tripped. She tripped? Aunt Carol's voice is dangerously calm. She tripped so hard she left a perfect red handprint on her own cheek? Get up, Annabelle. I pull myself up, using the washing machine for balance. My legs feel weak. My cheek is on fire. Aunt Carol looks at my face, and her own expression tightens, but she doesn't look away from Vivian. While still on the floor, the full, crushing weight of the situation hits me harder than the slap. My father. He is upstairs. He is asleep, lost in a fog of heavy medication, completely unaware that his wife just struck his daughter in the kitchen over a load of laundry. He is helpless, and I, the person supposed to be protecting him, am on the floor, bleeding in my own mouth. Vivian finds her footing. She draws herself up, her preferred weapon not physical, but legal. Get out of my house, Carol. This is a private family matter. If you don't leave, I will call the police. I'll tell them Annabelle attacked me, and you're trespassing. Aunt Carol's expression changes. The outrage fades, replaced by something cooler, more dangerous, something calculating. She reaches into her raincoat pocket and pulls out her own phone. Good, Aunt Carol says, her thumb tapping the screen. Let's get some officers here. While we're waiting, You and I can have a chat." She looks Vivian dead in the eye. "I brought a little something they might want to see." Vivian's bluff falters. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the truth. Vivian, for once." I notice it then, almost as an afterthought. Aunt Carol's tone. It's not just angry, it's certain. It's the tone of someone who holds all the cards. And as I look at the grocery bag she dropped on the counter, I see a manila folder peeking out from beneath a carton of chicken broth. It's thick, and written on the tab. I can just make out my father's name, Mark Rowan, and beneath it, the embossed logo of a law office I have never seen before. I stare at the folder, then at my aunt, then at the woman who just hit me. And I understand. Aunt Carol didn't just happen to walk in. She didn't just come over to drop off soup. She came expecting a fight, and she's brought more than just her temper. The folder on the counter is a bomb, but the fuse was lit a long time ago, standing in the kitchen with my cheeks stinging. I see the whole chain of events spooling backward, back to the first day, the day the locks on our life began to change. I was 11, maybe 12. My mother had been gone for 8 months, a period of time that felt both like a blurry second and an eternity of hollow. Quiet rooms, the house smelled like dust and stale air. My father, Mark Rowan, a man whose hands were meant for sanding wood and framing houses, was lost. He was all hollows, his eyes shadowed, his laughter gone. Then he introduced his new friend, Vivian Rowan, though she was just Vivian Venti then, or something similar. She didn't arrive. She made an entrance. I was sitting on the living room floor, trying to piece together a 1,000-piece puzzle, when the front door opened and she glided in beside my father. She was all polished surfaces. She wore an immaculate navy blazer, knife-pleat trousers, and small, severe diamond studs. Her hair was a helmet of perfect blonde. I was a child numb with grief, still wearing my mother's old college sweatshirt, and I didn't know what to do with the sudden, sharp scent of expensive perfume that had just invaded our space. "Annabelle, honey," she'd said, her voice smooth and practiced. She crouched down, not getting too close, a pantomime of empathy. "Your father has told me so much about you. You are so strong. Your mother would be so proud." She handed me a small, heavy box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a delicate porcelain music box, a ballerina. It was beautiful, expensive, and felt utterly alien in my hands. It wasn't a toy, it was a statement. I set it on the table, where it collected dust for a year before vanishing. Aunt Carol was there that day. She'd been a constant presence, arriving with casseroles we didn't eat and a blunt, sarcastic humor that was the only thing that felt real. She stood in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel, her eyes narrowing as she watched Vivian. Vivian's practiced sympathy didn't work on Carol. While Dad nervously explained that Vivian worked in financial consulting, Carol watched as Vivian's hand idly, subtly, moved the ceramic mug holding our spoons, my mother's favorite mug, from the counter to a high, unused shelf, as if she already owned the place. "So, finance," Carol said, her voice flat. "Sounds important?" "Oh, it's mostly just helping people plan for their future." "Carol," Vivian said, her smile never reaching her eyes, "making sure they're secure." The seeds of conflict were sown right there, in the first 10 minutes, over the next few weeks. Vivian was a helpful shadow. She'd bring groceries, organize Dad's mail, and offer to help Carol. "You know, Carol," Vivian said one afternoon, her tone dripping with concern as she tidied the living room, "I worry about you. You're pouring so much into this house, but Mark and I were just talking, and, well, he feels that having so many reminders," she gestured vaguely at a photo of my mom, "might be keeping everyone stuck in the past. It might be healthier, for Mark's sake, if you step back, just a little, let us breathe." Let us breathe. Aunt Carol, never one for subtlety, had just stared at her. "You know, Vivian, the air in this house was just fine until you started sucking it all up." But the poison had been administered. I began to notice a pattern. As long as Aunt Carol was there, Vivian was a stiff, smiling mask of helpfulness. But the second Carol's car pulled out of the driveway, I'd see Vivian's face relax into something colder, something exhausted and impatient. Her shoulders would drop, her smile would vanish, and she'd sigh, a long-suffering sound. "Your aunt means well," she'd tell me, wiping down a counter Carol had just cleaned. "But she has so much negative energy, she just doesn't respect boundaries." Boundaries, that was her word. It was a word she used to build walls. They married 6 months later, a small, quiet ceremony at a courthouse. I was the flower girl, in a stiff, itchy dress Vivian had picked out. After the wedding, the control became absolute, but it was gradual, like a tide coming in. Vivian claimed household decisions as her due. She didn't want Mark to worry his head about bills. So she took over the finances, his construction business, a modest company he'd built with his own 2 hands, suddenly had streamlined accounts. She started talking to his clients, handling the paperwork. She suggested they refinance the house, a house my mother had loved, to unlock its equity and make smart investments. And her manipulation, the tool she'd used to nudge Aunt Carol out, was now turned on me. Overt cruelty was messy, but emotional manipulation was clean. In my teen years, when I was awkward and angry and grieving, she honed it to a fine art. It was never, "Go clean your room." It was, "I know you want to earn your keep, Annabelle. It's hard on your father, having another mouth to feed." It was never, "We can't afford that." It was, "College is such a luxury, isn't it? You're smart. I'm sure you can find a nice job locally. Not everyone is cut out for university." Aunt Carol, who still tried to breach the perimeter, was the source of all my unrealistic dreams. Carol would slip me a $20 bill, and Vivian would find out. Carol would buy me a used SAT prep book, and Vivian would complain about the clutter. "Your aunt spoils you," Vivian would say, shaking her head. "She's pushing these unrealistic dreams, and it's just going to disappoint you. She doesn't live in the real world. Annabelle, she doesn't understand what it takes to run a real family." I was 15 when I heard the fight, the one that changed everything. I was supposed to be asleep, but I'd crept downstairs for water. Their voices were low and sharp, coming from the closed den. It was Aunt Carol's voice, tight with a rage I'd never heard. "I'm not stupid, Vivian, and neither is Mark. Though you're counting on it, I saw the statements. You have no right to go through our private mail." Vivian's voice was ice. "I have every right to look out for my sister's family. You're digging your nails into his accounts. Vivian, you're moving money. This construction business, Mark's business, it's not some corporate safety net for you to play with. He trusts you." "Mark trusts me because I am his wife." "Mark trusts you because he's still grieving and you're the only one in his bed," Carol shot back, and I heard a gasp, probably my own. "I'm warning you, and I'm warning him. He keeps signing papers he doesn't read, and you're going to bleed him dry. You're going to leave his daughter with nothing." There was a heavy silence, then my father's voice, tired and broken. "Carol, please, it's late. You're wrong. Vivian is helping us. You're making things worse." "Fine," Carol said. Her voice was clipped, defeated. "Fine, Mark. When you wake up, if you ever wake up, don't say I didn't warn you." The front door slammed. The next morning, Aunt Carol didn't come by, or the next week, or the month after that. When I finally asked, heart sinking, where she was, Vivian looked up from her laptop, the very picture of sad resignation. "Honey, I'm afraid your aunt chose to cut herself off. I tried to include her. You know I did. But some people just can't handle it when others move on. It's a shame. But we have to respect her decision." She had made my aunt disappear. I didn't believe her. Not really. But I was 15, and I was trapped. So I did the only thing I could. I got a part-time job at the local diner, washing dishes. I saved every dollar. I saved for college. Not because I thought I could go, but because of something Aunt Carol had told me years ago, when she'd helped me open my first tiny savings account. "Money is a door. Annabelle," she'd said, tapping the passbook. "It's freedom. You deserve doors that open." That sentence lodged in my heart. I saved my money in a bank Vivian didn't know about. I studied the SAT book in secret. I applied for nursing school scholarships, listing my diner manager as my reference. When I left for nursing school, 4 hours away, Vivian threw a small, performative send-off barbecue. She posed for pictures, her arm draped around my shoulder, joking to the neighbors about, "My smart girl, off to save the world." She was so proud, so supportive. And then, as I was loading the last box into my rusted-out car, she came over, checkbook in hand. "This is a little something from your father and me, to help with books." It was a check for $100. "Thank you," I said, forcing the words. She smiled, a tight, proprietary smile. "Of course, we'll miss you. But you know, this apartment is tiny. Your father and I have been talking about turning your room into a home office, so you might not have a room when you come back. Just so you know, it's good to learn to stand on your own 2 feet." Aunt Carol didn't come to the send-off. I'd sent her an invitation, a high school graduation announcement, and a short note about nursing school, all to her old address, hoping. I'd gotten no reply. I assumed it was her pride. I assumed she was still angry at my father, still bitter. I thought she had abandoned me, too. It wasn't until years later I would even consider that Vivian, who controlled all the mail, who answered my father's phone, had simply erased the messages, that she had painted me as too busy or not interested in her replies to my aunt. She had isolated us from each other, brick by brick. The flashback doesn't end there. It closes when I am 21. I am standing on a crowded lawn, the fabric of my graduation gown sticking to my back in the Ohio humidity. I've done it, on my own, with scholarships and diner money and crushing student loans. But I have my degree. I scanned the crowd, a sea of smiling faces, looking for one person. I was looking for that sharp, sarcastic, loving face. I was looking for Aunt Carol. I didn't find her. Instead, I saw Vivian. She was waving a big professional camera, her blonde hair perfect, her smile bright for the lens. She was waving at me, her smart girl, the one she had raised, the one she was already rewriting the story of. And behind her, my father stood, looking smaller, older, and just a little bit lost, clapping dutifully as his wife took credit for a victory she had tried, at every turn, to prevent. The call had come 3 weeks ago. Vivian's voice, a sound I hadn't heard in nearly a year, crackled over the line with a high-pitched, theatrical panic that sounded almost rehearsed. "Annabelle, you have to come home. It's your father. It's his heart." I was 36 hours into a 48-hour double shift, my body running on the fumes of stale coffee and the buzzing adrenaline of the ICU. My father, Mark, had collapsed in his workshop while I was miles away, charting on someone else's father. The guilt was a physical weight, a sharp, immediate stone in my stomach. I was in my car 2 hours later, making the 4-hour drive from Columbus back to the suburban Ohio cage I had escaped. At first glance, the house appeared well kept, comfortable, the lawn meticulously edged, the windows spotless, Vivian's touch. But this was her house, not ours, not anymore, and the details were all wrong. My old key still worked in the front door, but the inside felt like a stranger's home. Small, tasteful, silver-framed photos of Vivian and my father, on cruises, at wineries, at black tie events I knew he hated, had replaced every single photo of my mother. Vivian insisted I move into the small guest room at the end of the hall. "We just didn't have the space, sweetie," she'd explained, her voice dripping with false sympathy as she gestured with a manicured hand. "And this is much cozier for you, isn't it? More private." My childhood bedroom, the one I had left just 6 years prior, had been repurposed. When I'd pushed the door open, my stomach had hollowed out. The soft blue walls were gone, painted a sterile, glossy gray. A massive, white, minimalist desk dominated the space where my bed used to be. A Peloton sat in the corner where I'd done my homework. It was Vivian's home office and dressing room, and my presence in it was an intrusion. I was a guest. She had made sure I knew it from the first 5 minutes. But my father was the real shock. He was home from the hospital, but he wasn't there. His body was in the recliner, but his mind was lost in a fog. He was always one of two things: groggy and sluggish, his words slurring, or wired and terribly anxious, his hands picking at the threads of his blanket, his eyes wide. He was never in between. He was never just Dad. "It's the side effects of the anesthesia. The doctor said it's perfectly normal," Vivian said, waving off my concerns, my nurse's assessment. "The cardiologist is on top of everything." "I'd like to go to his next follow-up," I'd said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I can help translate, ask the right questions." Vivian had smiled, that tight, bright, brilliant smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Oh, honey, don't you worry your pretty head about it. It's all handled. Too many voices just confuse the doctors. You're overworked. You just focus on being his daughter." But she didn't want a daughter. She wanted temporary help. She created a narrative for the neighbors and the few friends my father was allowed to see. She was the devoted wife, the martyr, holding everything together by a thread. I was cast as our live-in nurse, a title she delivered with a proud little pat on my arm, as if I were a new appliance. She handed me chore lists, actual lists, typed and laminated, stuck to the stainless steel fridge. Monday, all linens and towels. Tuesday, dusting and vacuuming, all levels. Wednesday, groceries. See approved list. She expected meals cooked on a precise schedule, to a low-sodium, low-fat diet sheet she'd prepared. She, of course, ordered takeout for herself. My professional skills, the ones that could actually manage his complex post-operative care, were reduced to helping him shower and folding his laundry. I tried, early on, to set boundaries, to assert my role as both a daughter and a medical professional. "Vivian, I need to see his medical charts. I'm a nurse. I need to know his medication interactions, his parameters for his blood pressure." She deflected with that suffocating, fake warmth. "Sweetie, it's all handled. It's so complicated. It would just bore you. You're here to rest and help your father get around. Just focus on the simple things. I'll handle the grown-up stuff." That line, the grown-up stuff, as if I didn't handle life and death before my first coffee break, as if I weren't the one flushing his PICC line. I offered to pay a portion of the utilities, to contribute. She just laughed, a light, tinkling sound that set my teeth on edge. "Don't be silly. Your family. Just try to be mindful of the water heater, okay?" The real horror, the one that made my professional skin crawl, was in the medication. My father's pills, beta blockers, statins, blood thinners, a confusing and dangerous cocktail of post-op painkillers, were kept in a digital pill dispenser on the kitchen counter. It was a high-end model, the kind that locked, the kind designed to prevent misuse. Only Vivian had the 4-digit code. "It's just easier," she'd chirped when I asked about it. "That way, he doesn't get confused and double dose. His memory is just shot." But I saw the bottles, lined up on her pristine white desk in her new office. The pharmacy labels were correct, but many had smaller, white, adhesive stickers affixed, with Vivian's own neat, looping handwriting. 1 at 8 a.m. or half-tab at noon, or 1 at 4 p.m. if agitated. She wasn't just dispensing his medication, she was titrating it. She was managing his moods, keeping him quiet and compliant, not based on a doctor's orders, but on her own. And the mail, a thick stack of it, all addressed to Mark Rowan, sat in a locked drawer of her desk. I'd seen her sorting it. "Bills," she'd said. "Paperwork. It just upsets him. Seeing all the red ink. I handle it." I felt the isolation setting in, the suffocating atmosphere of her absolute control. Then, a small crack of light. About a week ago, I got a message on social media, a platform I rarely check, from an account I barely recognized. It was Aunt Carol. The message was brief, sent 2 days prior. Heard about Mark's heart. I'm so sorry. Are you there? Are you really okay in that house? My heart had leaped. I hadn't spoken to Carol in years, not since Vivian had so effectively painted her as the unstable, bitter enemy, the negative energy my father didn't need. I replied immediately, my fingers trembling. Yes, it's complicated. Can you talk? I went to the guest room, shut the door, and dialed the number she'd sent. My phone rang once, and then my door opened without a knock. Vivian stood there, her own phone in hand, an expression of pure, practiced panic on her face. Annabelle, thank God. My phone just died, right in the middle of a call with the insurance company. Can I please borrow yours? Just for 1 minute. I have to call them back. It was so sudden, so specific, it threw me. I was just about to make a call. Please, she insisted, stepping into the room. It's about your father's coverage. I'll lose the callback window. She was lying. I knew she was lying, but I was so conditioned to her manufactured crises that I handed my phone over. She stepped into the hallway, talking in low, urgent tones. She was back in less than 5 minutes, her face all smiles. You're a lifesaver. They're covering the home care nurse after all. Later that night, long after she was asleep, I went to try Carol's number again. I opened my phone, went to my outgoing call log, the single ring, the call I had just made. It was gone. She had deleted it. She had known, somehow, who I was calling. After that, the house shifted. The tension went from a low hum to a suffocating, static charge. The television was always on, and always loud, a constant barrage of game shows and cable news that made real conversation impossible. I'd hear Vivian patrolling the hallway at night, her slippers shushing on the expensive runner, pausing outside my door, then pausing outside my father's. And my father, he became strangely reactive. Anytime I tried to bring up finances, even just to ask if his disability pay had come through, he'd stiffen. Vivian handles it, he'd mutter, turning his face back to the blaring TV. Don't, Annie, just don't. You'll upset her. The final piece clicked into place 2 nights ago. I was in the pantry, looking for a protein bar, rummaging behind the boxes of high-fiber twigs and quinoa puffs that Vivian preferred. My fingers hit something stiff. I pulled it out. It was a thick 9x12 envelope, shoved deep into the bottom of the bin, tucked under a bag of lentils. It was from a law office I didn't recognize. Northbridge Trust and Elder Counsel. It was addressed, in a typed window, to Mr. Mark Rowan. I held it, the weight of it feeling wrong, heavy with implications. I brought it to Vivian, who was at the kitchen table painting her nails. I found this in the pantry. It looks important. She glanced up, her face a mask of bored indifference. She didn't even look at the logo. Oh, probably junk. Your father hates paperwork. They're just trying to sell him a will or something. I'll throw it out. She took it from my hand and, before I could protest, slid it into the recycling bin, tucking it under a pile of her glossy catalogs. That was it. That was the moment. My professional instincts, the ones I relied on every day to keep people alive, started screaming. This wasn't just a difficult stepmother. This wasn't just bitterness or control. This was a pattern. Hidden legal mail. Controlled. Unprescribed medication schedules. Isolation from family. Complete financial opacity. It looked, smelled, and felt exactly like the beginning stages of elder financial abuse. The kind I'd seen in my patients' families. The kind I'd been trained to report. Feeling trapped, utterly powerless, I went back to the guest room and did the only thing I could. I opened a private notebook, a little spiral-bound one I'd brought with my nursing supplies. I started documenting. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the name of the law firm on the envelope. I wrote about the deleted call to Aunt Carol. I wrote about the locked pill dispenser and the handwritten labels. I wrote down every insult, every condescending sweetie, every time she referred to me as staff. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what to do. I just knew that memory can be gaslit. A written record cannot. I had been living in that pressure cooker for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of being diminished, isolated, and treated like an incompetent, ungrateful child. 3 weeks of watching my father slip further into a medicated fog, his eyes vacant, his will evaporating. I was numb. I was on autopilot, just trying to keep my father safe, keep his dressings clean, and survive. That's where I was. That was the mindset I was in when I went into the laundry room this morning, still in my scrubs, to fold his clothes. That was the numb obedience I had sunk into, just to get through the day. And then she hit me. The laundry room blow-up, the crack of her hand against my face. It wasn't the start of the fight. It was just the breaking point. It was the one, final, brutal thing that snapped me out of the fog. My cheek is a blazing, 5-fingered map of my own humiliation. I'm standing, but I'm wobbling. My hand pressed to my face, tasting the salt of my own tears and the sharp iron of blood. For a split second, a white-hot flash of pure, animal rage surges through me, the urge to launch myself from the floor, to grab that pristine silk blouse, to scratch and bite and scream. I want to hit her back. But I don't. It's not just nursing de-escalation training. It's a lifetime of conditioning, a lifetime of conflict avoidance, of learning that to fight Vivian is to lose, to be cast as the hysterical one, the difficult one, the ungrateful one. My father's sad, disappointed face flashes in my mind. Annie, just try to get along. She's trying. So I just stand there, trembling, a victim, which is exactly what she wants. But Aunt Carol is not me. She has not been ground down by this house for the last decade. She steps closer to Vivian, a solid, unmovable object. Her shoulders are squared, her voice steady and vibrating with a low-frequency fury I have never heard. "Hit her again, Vivian," she repeats, her words precise and deadly. "Go on, I dare you. Hit her again, and you'll be doing it in front of a camera and a cop." My eyes, blurry with tears, follow Vivian's shocked, upward glance. And I see it. Above the pantry doorway, tucked into the ceiling molding, is a small, black dome, a tiny, almost invisible home security camera. A single, blinking blue light confirms it's active. It's new. I have been in this house for 3 weeks, and I never noticed it. My father must have installed it, perhaps for safety after his heart attack. A justification Vivian would have approved. Vivian tries to laugh, a high, brittle sound that shatters in the tense air. "Don't be ridiculous. Carol, that's for the driveway. It doesn't even point in here." "Doesn't it?" Aunt Carol says, not even bothering to look. "It's a wide-angle lens, Vivian, and it's clearly angled at the kitchen. Funny thing about these new systems, isn't it? They back up footage, instantly, to the cloud. Far beyond your ability to accidentally delete it, far beyond the reach of a woman who likes to hide things." "You are insane," Vivian spits, but her eyes dart back to the camera, then to me, then to Carol. The calculation is visible on her face. She's rewriting the narrative, trying to find a version where this is fine. "Am I?" Aunt Carol says, her voice dangerously pleasant. She reaches into her coat pocket, but instead of her phone, she pulls out a small black USB drive. She holds it up between her thumb and forefinger, like an exhibit. This is her first bombshell. "I got this in the mail 2 days ago. Vivian, anonymously, no return address. Just this," she waggles the drive, and a note that said, "Watch this. He isn't safe." And I did. I watched several short, interesting clips from this very kitchen. My favorite is the one from last Thursday. The one where you yank Mark's arm so hard he winces, all because he wouldn't take his pills fast enough. The one where you shove them into his hand and hiss at him that he's an ungrateful burden. Sound familiar? My stomach drops. It feels like the floor has fallen away, leaving me in a cold black void. Last Thursday, I was at the grocery store, following her laminated list. He'd been quiet and withdrawn all evening, and I'd assumed it was just the pain. Someone in this house has been quietly recording. Someone has been sending warnings. The obvious suspect would be my father, but in his current medicated state, it seems impossible, unless he set this all up before the surgery. A silent panic button. Vivian lunges. It's a sudden, ugly movement, all grace forgotten. She claws for the USB drive, for Carol's hand. You have no right. That's private property. You're trespassing. Give me that. Carol is faster. She steps back, pocketing the drive with one hand and pulling out her phone with the other. She taps the screen. Already uploaded, Vivian, she says sweetly. The cloud is such a blessing, isn't it? The threat of police, the one Vivian made, suddenly feels real, but it's not pointing at us anymore. Vivian's mask doesn't just slip, it shatters, falling away to reveal the raw, desperate malice underneath. You, she hisses, her voice a venomous whisper, turning on Carol. You bitter old spinster. You've always been jealous. Jealous I got him. Jealous I got this house. Jealous I have a life. You're just a miserable, dried-up old woman with nothing, and you want to ruin what I've built. Her eyes, wild and furious, snap to me. And you ungrateful trash. He doesn't even want you here. You're a constant reminder of what he lost. A good-for-nothing freeloader who doesn't deserve a dime after everything I've done for this family. Everything I've sacrificed. Instead of retaliating, instead of shouting back, Aunt Carol's entire demeanor shifts. She lowers her voice, forcing Vivian to lean in, forcing the tension to ratchet higher. You're right about one thing. Vivian, you did a lot, and I've been in touch with an elder law attorney who is very interested in all the things you've done. Bombshell number 2. It lands with a deafening silence. He's very interested in your husband's sudden change of beneficiaries. Very interested in his missing construction business accounts, the ones that were liquidated last month. He's especially interested in the new power of attorney documents you had him sign, the ones that give you, and not his daughter, full medical and financial control. My head is spinning. I'm learning this all in the same breath, in the same horrifying second. Aunt Carol continues, her voice a clinical, devastating blade. He was most interested, however, in Mark's original will, the one he signed with my sister, your predecessor, the trust they established when his daughter, Annabelle, was born, the one that named Annabelle as the primary beneficiary of this house and a significant portion of his assets, the one that named me as the trustee, to protect Annabelle's interests. She pauses, letting the words hang in the lemon-scented air. Paperwork that just disappeared shortly after you moved in. Vivian. I stare at my aunt, a trust, a will, my mother. She had tried to protect me, even from beyond the grave. She had tried. That's a lie, Vivian says, but the color has drained from her face, leaving her a pasty, terrified white. Mark and I updated everything. He wanted me to be secure. He did it all himself. He's of sound mind. Was he? Aunt Carol accuses, stepping closer. Was he of sound mind when you manipulated him into signing a new will, just 2 days after a triple bypass? While he was still in the ICU, heavily sedated on fentanyl and Versed? Do you think they don't keep logs of that? Vivian? Do you think Annabelle, a nurse, doesn't know what that drug cocktail does to a patient? Vivian shakes her head, her blonde helmet of hair finally in disarray. She's slipping, and she knows it. No, it wasn't then. It was later. He signed it at home. He signed it on the 10th. He was perfectly fine on the 10th. A fatal slip. My blood runs cold. I know that date. I was here, on the 10th. My father was barely conscious. He couldn't hold a spoon, let alone read and sign a complex legal document. That was the day his blood pressure bottomed out. The day I had to argue with Vivian to call the on-call cardiologist. That was the day he was, as I had documented in my own private notebook, lethargic and non-responsive to verbal stimuli. Before I can even say it, the sound of sirens wails in the distance, growing rapidly closer. Vivian freezes. She looks at Carol, then at me, then at the front door, her eyes wide with animal panic. Aunt Carol puts her phone back in her pocket. "Good," she says, nodding toward the window. "They're making good time." You actually called them?" Vivian whispers, horrified. "Of course I did," Carol says, as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. "I reported a domestic assault in progress, at this address, the one I just witnessed. The police do arrive. 2 officers, a man and a woman, their expressions all business as they step into the kitchen, a room now littered with scattered towels and the wreckage of our family's pretense. They separate us. One officer talks to Vivian by the counter, who is already crying, her voice trembling as she spins a tale of an unhinged sister-in-law and a stressed-out, violent stepdaughter. The other officer, the woman, takes me and Aunt Carol to the dining room. She looks at my cheek, the red mark now blooming into a purplish bruise under the skin. "Ma'am, did she do this to you?" I look at Aunt Carol. I look at the floor. I think of my father, asleep upstairs, his heart ticking like a time bomb. If I press charges, this becomes his nightmare. It becomes a story in the local paper. It becomes the thing that finally, truly breaks him. I tripped," I mumble, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "I fell into the laundry basket. I hit my face." The officer's eyes are kind, but skeptical. "You tripped." "She's in shock," Aunt Carol cuts in smoothly, placing a hand on my arm. "And she's trying to protect her father. But no, officer, she did not trip. I witnessed Mrs. Rowan strike my niece across the face, unprovoked. We will, however, decline to press charges at this time. It would be detrimental to my brother-in-law's fragile health." The officer nods, understanding the impossible family calculus. "I understand, but I'm required to file an incident report, regardless, and I'll need to take a photo of that injury for the report." I let her. I stand by the dining room table my mother bought, and I let a police officer take a photo of the handprint my stepmother left on my face. As the officers leave, after cautioning Vivian about domestic disturbances and giving me a card for victim services, the kitchen is silent. Vivian has fled to the master bedroom, the door slamming shut with a vindictive crack. It's just me and Aunt Carol, standing among the towels. I'm shaking, the adrenaline draining away, leaving me cold and sick. "Why?" I whisper, my voice hoarse. "Why wouldn't you let me press charges? You had her." Aunt Carol starts picking up the towels, folding them with brisk, angry movements. "A misdemeanor assault charge?" she scoffs. "A restraining order? That's not the leverage we need. Annabelle, that's messy. She'd paint you as the villain." She hands me a folded towel. Her eyes are dark, but they are no longer just angry. They are sharp, and they are focused. "That incident report," she says quietly, "that report now exists. It's an official record of her violence, her instability. It's documented. And when we combine that report and that photograph with the video of her abusing your father and the affidavit from the notary who watched her forge his signature, that, Annabelle, is not a messy little family fight." She looks at me, and I see the woman my mother trusted, the woman who has been waiting in the wings for this very moment. "That," she says, "is the leverage we desperately needed. Now, let's go over the rest of the plan. The attorney is expecting our call. Later that evening, the house is a tomb. The only sounds are the hum of the refrigerator and the slam of the master bedroom door, which Vivian has not emerged from since the police left. The scattered towels are gone, the laundry finished, the kitchen wiped clean, but the air is still thick, charged with the acidic fallout of the day. Aunt Carol and I are at the dining table, the table my mother picked out, a heavy, dark wood that Vivian has always complained was dated. Carol has made a pot of coffee, black and bitter, that steams in 2 mugs I don't recognize. Between us is the manila folder from her bag, now open and spilling its contents. It's a growing stack of documents, photocopies, and stapled bank statements. She's not just sulking, Carol says, her voice low as she nods toward the end of the hall. She's planning. She's on the phone with an attorney right now. Or she's shredding paper. We don't have a lot of time. I nurse the hot coffee, the bruise on my cheek, a dull, throbbing ache. Aunt Carol, I say, the question that's been burning in me for hours. How did you know to come? The USB drive? The lawyer? You didn't just hear about Dad's heart attack, did you? Aunt Carol stops shuffling papers. She looks at her hands, then at me. Her face, usually so sharp and certain, is etched with a deep, old weariness. No, she says, I didn't. She finally admits her own hidden agenda. I didn't just hear about Mark. I've been monitoring the situation for years, from a distance I'm not proud of. She explains, years ago, not long after Vivian had solidified her position, Carol received a formal letter from an attorney, my mother's attorney. It was a notification. My mother, Claire, in her final months, had established an irrevocable trust for me, Annabelle, to be activated on my 18th birthday or upon her death, whichever came later. It was tied to this house, the family home, and, to my shock, a significant portion of my father's construction business shares. My mother had named Aunt Carol as the sole trustee, giving her the legal power to manage and protect those assets on my behalf until I was 25. I tried to follow up. Annabelle, I swear I did, Carol says, her voice rough. I called the attorney. I tried to get copies of the paperwork, and I hit a wall, a new, very expensive wall. The file had been updated. My name was removed. The trust was frozen due to client direction. That's what they called it. Client direction, I echo, the words tasting like poison. My dad. Your dad. With Vivian's hand up his back, moving his mouth, Carol says bluntly. Every attempt I made to reach him after that was intercepted. My calls went unanswered. My letters, certified letters, were returned to me. Refused at sender. She cut me off. She cut you off from me, and from what your mother wanted. I stare at her, a dizzying, sick feeling rising in my chest. It's a mixture of a betrayal I can't place and a profound, aching relief. Betrayal that Carol had this information, this massive, life-altering secret, and just let it go, that she let Vivian win. But also relief, a sudden, sharp jolt of it, realizing that someone had tried to protect my future, that my mother had seen this coming, that I wasn't crazy for always feeling like a guest in a house that was supposed to be mine. So what changed? I ask. Why now? The bank, Carol says, tapping a recent multi-page statement from Maple Crest Financial. Your mother and I had our accounts at the same bank. I still do. So did Mark. A few weeks ago, a friend of mine, a senior teller who's been there for 30 years, called me. She said it was highly unusual, and she was worried about Mark. Large sums. Annabelle, tens of thousands of dollars, transferred out of his old construction company account, an account that was supposed to be protected, and into a brand new joint account, an account with Vivian as the primary, and Mark's name just as a secondary. That was the trigger. That was when Carol took her old, cold file to Jonathan Hales, the attorney from Northbridge Trust and Elder Counsel, the name I saw on the envelope in the pantry. Hales, Carol says. He's a quiet guy, but he's a bulldog. He immediately flagged the pattern, the sudden large transfers, the isolation. He said it was classic financial exploitation, and when I told him about the updated will, he said that's the other half of the puzzle. Control the assets, then control the estate. She slides a document across the table. It's a photocopy, the lines slightly blurred, but the intent is crystal clear. It's a copy of the original trust. My mother's signature, Claire Monroe Rowan, is at the bottom, next to my father's. Your mother was smart, Carol says, her voice soft. She put the house into the trust. Read this part. She points. I read the legal jargon, but the meaning is unmistakable. This residence is to be held in trust for the sole benefit of Annabelle Ford Rowan. Protections are in place against any future spouse or partner forcing a sale or using the property as collateral for non-trust-related debt. It was a fortress my mother built around me, and around this house. I finally understand. Vivian couldn't just convince Dad to sell, I whisper, the realization dawning. She couldn't just tear those papers up. They were legal. They were binding. She would have had to replace them. She had to create something new, something that superseded this, and get him to sign it. Updated documents, I say, the words from our earlier fight echoing. Documents he signed while trusting her to handle the details. The documents he signed on the 10th, when he couldn't even hold a spoon. The sting of it is doubled when Carol gestures to another, thinner file. Her face hardens. Hales found this. It's how she got her hooks in so deep, so early, and it's my fault. She admits her own failing. It's a document, a simple, one-page temporary arrangement, dated just 3 months after my mother's death. It gives Vivian limited, temporary authority over some of my father's financial decisions. For convenience, while he was incapacitated by grief. At the bottom is a signature, not just my father's, but Aunt Carol's. I signed it, she says, her voice thick with self-loathing. I was his sister-in-law. My signature, alongside his, gave it a veneer of family approval. He was a wreck. Annabelle. He was in pieces. She was so helpful, so organized. She said it was just to pay the household bills, to keep the business payroll going while he got back on his feet. I thought I was helping him. I thought I was doing what my sister would want, keeping her husband from drowning. That signature, that one act of convenience, that was the opening Vivian needed. That was the crack in the fortress. She leveraged those temporary, limited powers into deeper and deeper control, until the temporary became permanent, and the convenience became absolute. I've been kicking myself ever since I realized, Carol says. What a fool I was. I was so busy grieving Claire. I didn't see the predator right in front of me. A sudden sharp anger flares in my chest. Hot and undirected, I'm angry at Vivian. A deep, cellular hatred that feels new and terrifying. But I'm also angry at my aunt. Why did you step away? I ask, my voice sharper than I intend. You saw this. You knew what she was. You had that fight with them, the one I overheard, and then you just disappeared. You left me there with her. You let her do this. Aunt Carol doesn't defend herself. She doesn't make excuses. She just looks at me, her eyes unflinching, and accepts the blow. You're right, she says quietly. I did. I let my anger at Mark for remarrying, for being so blind, cloud my judgment. I let my pride get in the way. I thought I had more time. I thought Mark would eventually wake up and see what she was doing. I thought my warning would be enough. She leans forward, her gaze intense. I was wrong. I was wrong to walk away. I'm here now, Annabelle, because I will not make that mistake twice. She put her hands on you. She's destroying your father. It ends, now. The anger in my chest doesn't disappear, but it shifts. It focuses. It becomes a cold, clear resolve. Okay, I say, pulling my mug closer. She's in that room, shredding paper or calling her lawyer. What's our first move? Carol nods, her expression turning strategic. Hales has the legal side. We have the domestic one. She's been destroying evidence for years, but I'm betting she's arrogant. I'm betting she didn't find everything. This house is full of your mother's history. Vivian's a shredder, but your mom was a saver. She looks toward the hallway, then at the attic door at the end of the kitchen. We need to find any remaining original files, she says. Bank boxes, old folders, anything tucked away, anything with your mother's handwriting on it, before Vivian decides to do a deep clean and throw it all in a bonfire. Vivian leaves the next morning. It's a performance. She's taking Dad to a follow-up appointment, a clear power move designed to exclude me, to reestablish her control after yesterday's humiliation. Oh, no, sweetie, she'd said at breakfast, her voice a brittle, sugary performance for my father, who sat pale and silent in his bathrobe. Her cheek was faintly bruised where, she claimed, she'd walked into a cabinet door in the dark. My father just nodded, his eyes vacant. You look exhausted after your little episode. You stay here and rest. I can handle your father. She didn't invite me. She cemented my role as temporary, unnecessary staff. Aunt Carol arrives in her old practical sedan precisely 10 minutes after Vivian's white SUV pulls out of the driveway, gravel crunching. The timing is deliberate. She'll be gone at least 2 hours, Carol says, walking in the front door without knocking, a grim set to her jaw. That facility is halfway across the county, and she'll stop for coffee and a manicure to de-stress. Let's get to work. We don't start in Vivian's new office, my old bedroom. That's too obvious. She will have scrubbed that room clean of anything incriminating. We start, as Hales suggested, with the less obvious places. The hall linen closet reveals nothing but expensive, lavender-scented sachets and towels that are clearly for show. The storage under the guest bed, my current bed, yields only dust bunnies and an old high school yearbook. Then we go to the garage. It was once my father's sanctuary, smelling of sawdust, oil, and varnish. Now, it's as sterile as an operating room. The walls are painted gray, the concrete floor is sealed, and his tools hang on a pristine pegboard. Untouched. Vivian's SUV takes up the main bay, and my father's old truck sits in the corner, covered in a tarp. But Vivian is arrogant, and she is wasteful. Tucked behind the matching municipal recycling and trash bins is a tall, black, cross-cut shredder I don't recognize, and beside it, stacked neatly for pickup, are 3 large, clear plastic bags, packed dense with paper confetti. Bingo, Carol mutters. She tears one of the bags open. The shredded paper is thick, high quality, not the thin paper of junk mail. It's a chaotic mix of white, cream, and pale blue, the colors of bank statements and legal documents. It's impossible to reconstruct. It's just gone. But it is, in itself, proof. She's been busy, Carol says, her voice grim. She pulls out her phone and takes several high-resolution photographs of the bags, of the shredder's brand, of the pile of evidence waiting for the garbage truck. One for Hales, evidence of destruction of potential evidence. He'll love that. It's all gone, I say, a hollow feeling spreading through me. Whatever we were looking for, she's already destroyed it. Not everything, Carol says, wiping her hands on her jeans. She's a shredder. Your mother was a saver, and Vivian hates dust. She looks toward the kitchen and the pull-down cord for the attic stairs. The attic is the only place in this house that Vivian hasn't repurposed. It's hot, stifling, and smells of cedar, old insulation, and the past. It is a graveyard of things Vivian deemed tacky or dated. It is, I realize, a sanctuary of my mother's life. We pull down the rickety stairs, the springs groaning in protest. Carol grabs 2 flashlights from a garage drawer. We climb into the heat and the gloom. It's just as I remember it. Boxes of holiday decorations, my father's old drafting table under a sheet, bags of my old clothes. Carol heads for a stack of old, water-stained file cabinets. I head for the corner my mom always called Annabelle's History. It's tucked far back under the eaves, buried under a deflated air mattress and a box labeled Christmas Ornaments, Fragile. It's not a modern plastic bin. It's an old, heavy-duty banker's box, the cardboard soft with age, sealed with yellowing, brittle packing tape. And on the side, in a familiar, elegant, left-slanting script of blue marker, is one name, Claire Monroe, my mother's maiden name. My hands start to shake. The sight of her handwriting, so alive, so real, makes my knees buckle. It's a physical punch, a sudden, sharp grief that steals my breath. "Carol," I whisper, my voice cracking. She's at my side in a second, her flashlight beam joining mine. "That's it, Annie. That's got to be it." We carry the box to the center of the attic, setting it down on an old rug under the single, bare light bulb. It's heavy, I slice the tape with Carol's pocket knife. The smell of paper, old and dry, rises up. The top layer is family photos, loose and in faded albums. My parents' wedding, me as a baby, my mother, young and vibrant, smiling at a beach I don't remember, letters from my grandmother, tied in a ribbon, my bronzed baby shoes. And underneath it all, a set of meticulously organized, stiff manila folders. My fingers, still shaking, find the first one. The tab is labeled in that same blue ink, House and Trust, for Annabelle, 18 plus. My heart is hammering so hard I can barely breathe. I open the folder. It's not a photocopy, it's the original, heavy cream-colored legal paper, the lines typed from an old-fashioned typewriter or word processor, and at the bottom, the signatures, still dark in blue ink, my father's, Mark Rowan, clear and firm, and my mother's, Claire Monroe Rowan. This is it, the original, notarized trust deed, the fortress my mother built. Attached to the front with a rusted paperclip is a single sheet of her personal stationery. It's a letter, addressed to me. My dearest Annabelle, if you are reading this without me here, it means I'm gone, and probably sooner than I'd hoped. Know that I love you more than the sky. I want you to be safe, always. I've set this up so that this house, our home, will always be your safe place. It's yours. No one can take it from you, and no one can use it to hurt you. Your father has promised to protect this. And you? Be brave, my girl. I love you. I have to stop. The tears I've been holding back since yesterday finally falling, dripping onto the dusty attic floor. My father, he knew. He agreed. He wanted this for me. She knew, Carol whispers, her voice thick. She's found another folder. This one is simply labeled C. Monroe and C. Rowan, for Claire and Carol. Inside is not a legal document, but a handwritten note on a plain white card. It's from my mother. To my sisters, it says, though Carol was her only sister, if anything happens to me, please watch over Annabelle together. Mark is a good man, but he is soft, and he is lonely. He grieves hard. Do not let money become the thing that breaks you. Do not let anyone come between you and my daughter, or between each other. Protect her, together. I look at Carol. Her face is pale, her jaw tight. She closes her eyes, clutching the note. She knew, Carol whispers again. She knew he was a target. She knew he was vulnerable. I realize, in that dusty, suffocating light, that my mother never wanted Aunt Carol pushed out. She wanted her in. She wanted them to be a team. Vivian's entire narrative, the negative energy, the boundaries, the cutting herself off, it was all a lie. It was a strategic campaign to break the alliance my mother had tried to build. Then I find the last thing, at the very bottom of the box. It's out of place. It's not from my mother. It's a small, black, spiral-bound notebook, the kind my dad always used for his construction bids, the kind he kept in his truck. It's a ledger, his handwriting, a nearly illegible, hurried scrawl, fills the pages, dates, amounts, transfers. My eyes scan the entries, my blood running cold. Most are normal. Materials for deck, $2,000. Payroll, week of June 10th. But as the dates get more recent, the entries get stranger. V, new account, $10,000. V, says this will be temporary, for investments. Refinance papers, not sure about this, feels wrong. V, says it's to lower payment. V needs new car, says her old one is unsafe, $20,000. My father wasn't just grieving, he was confused. He was being gaslit. But a part of him, the careful, meticulous builder, was still keeping a record. He was documenting his own fleecing. And then I see it, the last entry in the book, a notation from about 6 months ago, just before his health really started to slide, just before the heart attack. Installed kitchen cam. V, hates it, says it's ugly, told her it's for break-ins. It's not. She's changing. Worried about her. If something happens, I want a record. Password. Carol's birthday. I look at Carol, my heart hammering against my ribs. A new, wild hope rising. He knew. Oh God. Carol, he knew. He was scared. He saw something. He wasn't oblivious. He was trapped. He was a man being slowly isolated, and he tried to set up a silent alarm system. An alarm that would eventually point right back to the one person he knew he could trust, even if he'd pushed her away, Aunt Carol. "What's your birthday?" I ask, my voice hoarse. "October 5th, she says, her eyes wide. 1960. We scrambled down from the attic, the dust of the past clinging to our clothes, the original trust deed clutched in my hand. We don't go to the main family computer. Vivian's office is a minefield. We go to my guest room, to my personal laptop. I find the camera's website from a quick search. I type in the username, Emma Rowan, and the password, October 5th. We're in. The account is active. The cloud storage is full of footage. Weeks and weeks of it. It's not constant. It's motion-activated. Snippets of life that, when pieced together, form a horrifying mosaic. We don't have to watch long. We see clips of Vivian, alone in the kitchen at night, pulling cash from my father's wallet, his allowance, as she'd called it, and stuffing it into her own purse. We see her pressuring him to sign forms at the kitchen table. "Just sign it, Mark. It's just for the insurance. Don't be difficult." We see her snapping at him when he asks a question. "Why does Annabelle need to know anything? It's our money, not hers. She's not part of this. You need to stop thinking about the past." And then, we find it. A clip from 2 weeks ago. The date stamp matches the week I found the envelope in the pantry. The clip shows Vivian getting the mail. She sorts it at the counter, just as she always does. She stops, holding a thick 9x12 envelope. We see the logo clearly, even in the slightly grainy footage. Northbridge Trust and Elder Council. The letter from Hales. She doesn't hide it. She doesn't throw it out. She opens it. She stands there, in my father's kitchen, and scans the contents. Her face, in profile, twists into a mask of pure contempt. Then, she calmly walks over to the new, black shredder in the corner, feeds the entire multi-page document into the slot, and watches, her arms crossed, until every last piece of it is gone. She knew. She's been getting notices from Hales. Carol breathes, her face white. She knew we were coming. She's been destroying the warnings. We don't talk. We work. For the next hour. We are a machine. We download every clip. The assault on my father, the cash, the coercion, and the shredding. We back them up onto 2 separate thumb drives, and then we upload the entire archive to a secure, private cloud account, the one Hale secure that Hales had set up for Carol. We make it impossible for Vivian to erase this digital trail. It is secure. It is saved. It is permanent. I sit back, the laptop glowing in the dim light of the guest room. The house is silent. Vivian will be home soon. I am sitting on the floor, cradling my mother's letter in one hand and my father's desperate, secret ledger in the other. I realize, with a clarity that hurts, that both of my parents tried, in their own flawed, human ways, to protect me. My mother tried with foresight and legal ink. My father tried with a hidden ledger and a secret password, a desperate, fading message in a bottle. Vivian had tried to erase them both. She had shredded the law, and she had medicated the witness. But she failed. Now it's my turn. It's my turn to protect them, and I finally have the weapons to do it. The offices of Northbridge Trust and Elder Council are not what I expected. They are not the sleek, glass and chrome towers of Vivian's world. They occupy a restored brick building on a quiet downtown street. The floors are worn hardwood, and the air smells of old books and strong coffee. It feels solid. It feels like the truth. We sit at a heavy oak table in a conference room. Jonathan Hales, the man Aunt Carol has been working with, is the opposite of the slick attorney I pictured. He's in his 50s, with a tweed jacket, kind eyes, and the quiet, methodical presence of a librarian. He listens, his hands steepled, as Carol and I lay out our opening salvo. We give him everything, the original, dusty trust deed my mother wrote, still smelling of cedar, my father's small, black ledger, open to the page with the damning password. We give him the thumb drive containing the kitchen footage. He watches it all on his laptop, his expression remaining perfectly, unnervingly neutral. He watches Vivian shove pills at my father. He watches her shred the envelope from his own office. He watches her strike me, watches me fall into the towels, and watches Aunt Carol step in. He just nods, pausing the video of the slap. The police report of that incident was filed this morning, he says, his voice calm. That's good. That's very good. He leans back, and the librarian vanishes, replaced by the bulldog Carol described. Here are your options, he says, his voice suddenly sharp, clinical. They are not mutually exclusive, and I recommend we pursue all 3 tracks simultaneously. He ticks them off on his fingers. 1. We file for emergency temporary guardianship over your father. Mark, we petition the court to have you, Annabelle, and you, Carol, appointed as co-guardians. We use the video of the pill shoving, the incident report of the assault, and the evidence of medication mismanagement. He taps my nursing notebook. To prove he is in immediate physical danger under his wife's care. 2, he continues, we challenge the validity of the new will, the one she had him sign on the 10th. We argue that he lacked full mental and physical capacity, that he was under undue influence, and that the signing itself was fraudulent, your father's own ledger and your testimony. Annabelle, as a medical professional observing him that day, are the core of that challenge. And 3, we pursue a civil claim for financial exploitation. We use the original trust, the bank statements from Maple Crest, and the ledger to prove a consistent long-term pattern of abuse. We will demand a full forensic accounting of every penny Vivian has touched, and we will move to freeze the assets she's attempted to transfer. He pauses, letting the weight of the strategy settle in the quiet room. But you must understand, all of this hinges on one thing. We have to prove, definitively, that your father lacked the capacity to make these decisions. We have to prove he didn't know what he was doing. And that, unexpectedly, is where I hesitate. My hand tightens on my coffee mug. But what if he did? I whisper, the thought tasting like betrayal. What if he was just weak? What if he was lonely and he chose her, and he wanted her to have it? What if he knew exactly what he was signing, just to make her stop, just to have peace? It's the last, desperate foothold of the illusion, that my father was a participant, not just a victim, that he chose this, which would make him weak, but not helpless, the ledger entries, the video of him wincing as Vivian badgers him. Just sign it, Mark, or we'll lose everything. They all strip away that illusion, leaving only the raw, ugly truth. He was a sick man, and she was his predator. Hales gives me a long, compassionate look, and then he reveals his surprise. Annabelle, he says gently, I understand your hesitation. It's a terrible thing to accept, but there's something you don't know, something that makes this case much, much clearer. He opens a different file on his desk, one that wasn't in our stack. Your father, Mark, quietly met with me once, on his own, about 6 months before his heart attack. I sit bolt upright. Aunt Carol gasps. He came in here, Hale says, gesturing to the chair I'm sitting in. He was worried. He said, and I quote from my notes, I think I've made a mess of my estate. He said his wife, Vivian, had helped him reorganize his finances, but he was no longer sure what was where. He was concerned. He explicitly asked me about restoring the original trust, the one his first wife, Claire, had created. My God. The ledger entry, not sure about this, feels wrong. He wasn't just writing it down. He was trying to fix it. Hales continues. He was trying to get his construction business accounts, the ones his wife had merged with her own, Separated and protected for you, Annabelle. He was trying to undo the damage. Because of that prior meeting, Hales already has a file. He has contemporaneous notes, taken months before the surgery, months before the ICU, that show my father's clear, stated desire to safeguard me. Those notes, Hales explains, predate the new, fraudulent will Vivian pushed on him. They establish a baseline of his true intent. He didn't come back for a second appointment. The heart attack hit him first. So you see, Hales says, closing the file, we are not just challenging Vivian. We are, in fact, finishing what your father started. He knew he was in trouble. He just ran out of time. I leave the office in a daze, the original trust deed in my bag, my mind reeling. My father wasn't just a victim. He was a man trying to fight back, in his own quiet, flawed way. The war begins the next afternoon. A certified letter arrives. I see the mailman deliver it. It requires a signature. Vivian, dressed in her silk lounging robe, signs for it at the front door. She disappears into her office, my old bedroom, for almost an hour. When she emerges, her face is a mask of controlled, reptilian fury. She finds me in the kitchen, where I am monitoring my father's blood pressure. He is finally, blessedly, asleep in his recliner in the next room, the blaring television finally silent. So, she says, her voice dangerously low, it's true. The bitter old spinster and the ungrateful whelp, a two-woman army. I don't look up from the cuff. I just continue writing his numbers in my notebook. 135/90, too high. The stress. You're trying to steal my husband, she hisses. I finish writing and look up. His pressure is high. Vivian, he needs his 81 milligram aspirin, and you're out. Don't you dare talk to me about aspirin, she shrieks, abandoning her attempt at control. You think you can just march in here with that jealous old crone and take him from me? You think you can steal his money? This is the confrontation, but this time, it's not just her anger against my fear, it's her panic against my facts. I rescued him, she says, her voice rising, jabbing her finger at me, though she stays a careful 5 feet away. The police report. I rescued him from that mausoleum this house used to be. I gave him a life. I took care of him when he was a grieving, pathetic wreck. You abandoned him. You ran off to your career and left him all alone. I was here. I am his wife. I earned this. I don't shrink. I don't raise my voice. I just stand up, capping my pen. I'm not here to steal his money. Vivian, I'm here to stop you from stealing it. Her face, for a second, goes utterly blank with shock. She has never heard this tone from me. I know about the original trust, I say calmly. The one my mother wrote, the one that protected me, and this house, the one you've been trying to break for 20 years. Her mouth opens, but I continue. I know you've been hiding legal notices. I know you shredded the one from Jonathan Hales. And I know you coerced my father into signing a new will, on the 10th, when he was so drugged he couldn't hold his own head up. Her eyes are wide. The panic is rising. I don't know what... You're insane. But the best part, Vivian, the part you didn't count on, we have the footage. We have the video of you forcing him. We have the video of you shredding the mail. We have the video of you hitting me. And now, thanks to Aunt Carol, we have a police report documenting it. She tries her last, best weapon, the one that has always worked. Get out, she snarls, her face mottled in red. Get out of my house, right now. I am packing your bags and you are leaving. You are not welcome here. Get out. No, I say. It's a word I've never used against her. It stops her cold. No, she sputters. I will have you removed. This is my house. That's the funny part, I say, feeling a cold, hard certainty I've never known. We're not so sure it is. I've seen the original deed. Vivian, the one Hales has a copy of, and the one I have in my bag. This house was placed into a trust my mother created, a trust that, according to our attorney, was never legally and properly dissolved. You can't throw me out of a house that might, in fact, be mine. We are in a stalemate. She is legally cornered. Her control over the estate, over the house, is shaky, and she knows it. So she retreats, and she uses her last remaining weapon, my father. The house, over the next 2 days, becomes a cold war. Vivian's legal control is in question, but her day-to-day, practical control over Mark's care is absolute, and she wields it like a scalpel. She starts scheduling appointments without telling me. "Oh, doctor, Patel had a cancellation. We had to rush out," she'll say, returning with a heavily medicated dad, a smug smile on her face. She keeps him behind closed doors. "He's resting," she snaps. When I knock, "You're stressing him out. Annabelle, all this negativity you and your aunt are bringing, it's terrible for his heart. The doctor said he needs calm." She's gaslighting him. I can hear her low, murmuring voice through the door at night. She's painting me as the villain, the one trying to steal his money and lock him up. I am trapped in an ethical nightmare. The nurse in me is screaming that this stress is bad for him. The constant fighting, the tension, it is setting back his recovery. Am I doing the right thing? Or am I letting my own need for justice put my father's life at risk? I am not a lawyer. I am a nurse, so I fall back on my training. I cannot control the legal battle, but I can control his care. I advocate for his medical rights, relentlessly. I check his chart. I call the cardiologist's office myself to confirm his next appointment, and I inform the nurse on the line that I, his daughter and a registered nurse, will be attending. Aunt Carol, meanwhile, suggests we play nice. "What?" I hiss, scrubbing a pot in the kitchen, furiously. "Play nice? Carol, she's poisoning him against us." "I know," Carol says, her voice firm. "And we are not going to give her 1 more ounce of ammunition. No more shouting, no more confrontations. She wants to paint us as hysterical, unstable, and harassing. We will be calm. We will be polite. We will be the picture of reasonable concern. Let her be the only one who screams. We have Hales. Let him do the fighting." It infuriates me. It feels like surrender, but it proves wise. Vivian, denied the shouting matches she feeds on, becomes more and more erratic, while we remain calm, documenting every single obstructive thing she does. The section ends not with a bang, but with a quiet, decisive click. Hales calls me on my cell while I'm in the grocery store, buying the aspirin Vivian forgot. "It's set," he says. "I've filed the emergency motion, and I've scheduled the final piece, an independent medical evaluation of your father's cognitive state. It's with a neutral neurologist, Dr. Aris. Vivian will be legally compelled to allow it. This, Annabelle, will be the truth. This will be the evidence that breaks the case. We were playing nice. We were being calm, polite, and reasonable, just as Carol and Hales had advised. We were avoiding confrontations, documenting everything, and waiting for the independent medical evaluation. We were waiting for the law to work. We did not realize Vivian wasn't playing the same game. She wasn't waiting. She was moving. Sensing the walls closing in, she executed her own plan. I came home from a short grocery run. The aspirin and orange juice I'd bought for my father clutched in a plastic bag. Aunt Carol was scheduled to arrive for her afternoon shift in 30 minutes. I walked into the house, and the silence was wrong. It wasn't the usual, tense quiet of a sick room. It was an empty quiet. "Dad?" I called out, heading for the living room. The recliner was empty. The Afghan my mother had knit was folded neatly on the arm. His walker was gone. His pill dispenser, the locked, digital one, was gone from the kitchen counter. I ran up the stairs, my heart pounding a sick, frantic rhythm. I went to his bedroom, the one he shared with Vivian, a room I never entered. The door was open. The bed was made. His slippers were gone. Downstairs, on the hall table, where mail was usually placed, sat a single, cream-colored envelope, not even sealed. My name, Annabelle, was written on it in Vivian's looping, arrogant script. I tore it open. It wasn't a letter. It was a note. Your father's health is my top priority. Since you and your aunt have created such a stressful and hostile environment, I've moved him to a facility where professionals can care for him properly. Away from your negative influence. He is safe and comfortable. You'll get the address from my attorney. When Aunt Carol arrived, she found me sitting on the floor in the hallway. The note crumpled in my fist. The house utterly, terrifyingly empty. Hales got the information from Vivian's attorney, who was clearly enjoying his role as gatekeeper. The facility was Oakview Terrace. It was exactly what I expected. Upscale, aggressively tasteful, with a manicured lawn and a lobby that looked like a five-star hotel. It was the kind of place that costs $10,000 a month, the kind of place designed to drain my father's construction accounts in less than a year. We walked in, Aunt Carol and I, looking like what we were, two women in a panic. The receptionist, a young woman with a plastic smile and perfect hair, stopped us before we could even approach the desk. May I help you? We're here to see Mark Rowan, I said, my voice tight. She typed, her smile tightened. I'm sorry, Mr. Rowan is not accepting visitors at this moment. He's just settling in. I'm his daughter, I said, my nursing ID still clipped to my bag, a reflex. And this is his sister-in-law. We're not visitors, we're his family. I understand, she said, her voice infuriatingly calm. However, according to our records, the sole legal decision-maker for Mr. Rowan is his wife, Vivian Rowan. We have a durable power of attorney document on file. She delivered the final, devastating lines without a flicker of emotion. Mrs. Rowan has left very strict instructions. All visitors must be approved by her, and she is to be notified of any inquiries. Would you like me to call her for you? The world tilted. The floor of the pristine, lemon-scented lobby seemed to fall away. This was it. This was the checkmate move. She had him. She had him in an institution where her word was law, backed by a legal document. She could stop us from seeing him. She could tell the staff we were hysterical or abusive. She could, and would, continue draining every cent he had to pay for this gilded cage, all while appearing to the world as the devoted, long-suffering wife, sparing no expense for his care. I called Hales from the car, my voice shaking with a rage so cold it terrified me. She's locked him up. Hales, she's got a POA, and they won't let us in. She overplayed her hand, Hales said, and for the first time, I heard real anger in his voice. She can't legally bar all family, but the POA is the key. She just handed us the proof we need of her obstructive behavior. I'll get a copy from the facility's legal department. Stay put. He had a copy in our hands within 2 hours, faxed to a local print shop where we'd gone to wait, stewing in the smell of toner and cheap paper. We sat in Carol's car, the windows fogged with our angry breath, and stared at the document. It's dated, I whispered, my blood running cold. It's dated the day after she moved him, yesterday. She didn't just move him, Carol breathed. She moved him so she could do this, in private, away from us. I looked at my father's signature on the last page. It was awful. It was a shaky, spidery scrawl, barely recognizable. It looked nothing like the firm, confident signature on my mother's trust, or even the slightly tired signature in his own ledger. It was the signature of a man who couldn't hold a pen. That's not the only red flag, Hales said when we called him back. Look at the notary stamp, the witnessing notary. Carol read the name aloud. Alex Pierce, commissioned in this county. Now look at the address on his stamp, Hales said. I didn't recognize it. Aunt Carol did. Her eyes widened in disbelief. That's the address of the Glenview Country Club, she said. Vivian's favorite golf course, the place she has lunch 3 times a week. Hales didn't hesitate. I'm calling Mr. Pierce's office. We expected to wait for days. We expected a wall of legal and professional silence. We got a call back in 1 hour. And it wasn't just Hales. It was Hales, with Alex Pierce on the line, patched through to my cell phone. Ms. Ford? Ms. Rowan? a new voice said. It was young, and it was shaking. "This is Alex Pierce. Mr. Hales explained the situation. I think I've made a terrible mistake." We sat in the car, stunned into silence, as the story tumbled out. Alex Pierce, it turned out, was a young paralegal who did notary work on the side, mostly for members at the country club signing golf cart leases or membership renewals. "I've been losing sleep over this, I swear," he rushed to say, his words tumbling over each other. "Mrs. Rowan is a big name at the club. She caught me yesterday afternoon, said it was an emergency. She said her husband was in assisted living at Oakview, and she needed a routine update to his medical directives notarized immediately. She offered me $500 in cash." My stomach turned over. "I went to the facility," he continued, his voice cracking with anxiety. "I felt weird about it. She met me in the main lobby. She had Mr. Rowan in a wheelchair. He looked terrible. He looked like he was asleep. She kept nudging him. 'Mark, honey, wake up. The man is here, just like we talked about.'" I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. "He seemed so confused," Alex said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I asked him, 'Mr. Rowan, do you understand what this document is? Are you signing this of your own free will?' It's the law. I have to ask him that." "And what did he say?" Carol asked, her voice sharp as a razor. "He looked at me, but it felt like he looked right through me. And then he looked at the paper and he asked, 'What is this? What is this, Viv?' And she laughed, that tinkly laugh, and said, 'It's just the forms, honey, just the routine update for the nice doctors.' And before I could say anything, she put her hand over his. She took his hand, the one with the pen, and she guided it. She made the signature for him." I held my breath. Coercion, forgery, a signature obtained under duress from an incapacitated person. "I knew it was wrong," Alex whispered, his panic evident. "I knew it violated every notary rule. I didn't stop her. I was scared. She's an important person. I stamped it, and I left. I haven't slept. When Mr. Hales called my office and left a message about a fraudulent power of attorney, I knew it was this one. I am so sorry. I will testify to all of it. I'll sign an affidavit. I don't want to go to jail for this." Hales took over, his voice calm and professional, thanking Mr. Pierce, assuring him that his cooperation was the best and only thing he could do. He hung up. Aunt Carol looked at me, a grim small smile on her face. "She overplayed her hand," she said, echoing Hales. That seemingly airtight document, the one that had locked us out? It had just become the liability that would let us in. Hales would have the sworn affidavit by morning. The affidavit was enough to force Oakview's hand. They couldn't bar me completely, not with a legal challenge pending, but Vivian could still make it hell. I was allowed to visit, but only during designated public hours. From 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., I had to sign in at the front desk, and the receptionist, her smile now openly hostile, had to call Vivian's cell phone every single time to notify her that I had arrived. I was an intruder in my own father's care. I found him in his room. It was beautiful, with a view of a fake, bubbling fountain, and it was a sterile, lonely prison. He was propped up in bed, the TV blaring another game show. He looked smaller. "Dad?" I said, touching his arm. He seemed foggier than at home, his eyes dull. "Annie," he slurred, a faint smile. They brought pudding." I sat with him for the full 2 hours, holding his hand, taking his vitals quietly, my nurse's assessment kicking in. His skin was clammy, his pulse was thready. He was over-medicated. Vivian was controlling this too, telling the staff he was agitated or in pain, and they, bound by her fraudulent POA, were complying. I went back the next day, and the day after. On the third day, the fog seemed to lift, just for a moment. I was just talking, filling the silence, telling him about my cat back in Columbus, about the weather, when his hand, which had been limp in mine, suddenly gripped me. It was weak, but it was him. Dad? His eyes focused on mine. They were clear, and they were terrified. I messed up, kiddo, he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. It's okay, Dad. We're fixing it. No, he shook his head. A tiny pained movement. I should have listened. To your mom, Claire. She knew. She told me. My breath caught. What, Dad? What did she tell you? His eyes welled with tears. He squeezed my hand again, a desperate, fading pressure. Don't let her sell the house. Annie, it's yours. She's so angry. Don't let her. His eyes unfocused. The lucidity was gone, as quickly as it came. Slipping back beneath the chemical tide, he was gone. I left Oakview Terrace with tears streaming down my face. I sat in my car in the parking lot and sobbed. Not for the father I was losing, but for the one I had. For a moment, just found, those words solidified my resolve. This wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about a house. It was the tangible piece of my mother's promise. It was the symbol of everything Vivian had tried to erase, and I would not let her win. Vivian felt the net tightening, the upcoming evaluation, the failed POA. She knew we had something, so she launched her smear campaign. She started calling extended family, old neighbors, anyone who would listen. We heard it from Aunt Carol's cousin. Annabelle was suing her own father. Annabelle was contesting the will of a man who wasn't even dead. Annabelle and her bitter aunt were trying to lock Mark up to take his money after he'd been so generous, letting me live in his house, rent-free. It was a campaign of social and emotional isolation, designed to paint us as the villains before we ever set foot in a courtroom. But, like the POA, it backfired. We were back at the house, at the dining table, sorting through the attic box for more of my mother's files, when the doorbell rang. It was our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Garrison, a woman in her 70s who had known me since I was born, and who had been exchanging polite, surface-level pleasantries with Vivian for 20 years. "Annabelle," she said, her voice low. She didn't just stand on the porch. She stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked terrified. I heard the things Vivian is saying, about you suing your father." "Mrs. Garrison, it's not true," I started, but she held up a hand. "I know," she said. "Vivian has a loud voice, and she isn't always careful about who is listening." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a small USB drive, identical to the one Carol had received in the mail. "This is from my doorbell camera. From, about 3 weeks ago, before he left." She pressed it into my hand. "I don't know what's going on, dear, but your mother was a saint, and your father is a good man, and whatever this is, it's not you." She left as quickly as she had come. Aunt Carol and I plugged the drive into my laptop. The footage was grainy, time-stamped from an evening weeks earlier. It was angled at her front door, but it clearly captured our driveway. It showed Vivian's SUV. The door open. Vivian was there, trying to get my father into the car for one of her secret appointments. He was hesitating, leaning on his walker, clearly confused or in pain. Vivian's voice, captured by the sensitive microphone, was not the sweet, concerned tone she used in public. It was a sharp, furious hiss. "Get in the car. Mark, stop being a child. You are embarrassing me." I don't feel good. Viv," my father's voice, weak and pleading. "I don't care how you feel. Get in." And then, she did it. She grabbed his arm, the one he was using to balance, and she shoved him, hard. He stumbled, collapsing into the passenger seat, his walker clattering to the pavement. Vivian looked around, her eyes darting across the quiet suburban street, before slamming the door on him. Another puzzle piece, another act of violence, another moment of proof. The woman who claimed professionals can care for him better was the one from whom he needed professional protection, On Jonathan Hales's advice, we agreed to a Banksly conference. It was, as he explained it, a last-ditch attempt to settle matters privately, to avoid dragging my father's name through a public guardianship hearing. But I knew its real purpose. It was to gauge, in a controlled environment, how Vivian would respond when confronted with the full, unvarnished weight of the truth. We met at his office, in the large conference room with the worn hardwood floors. Vivian did not come alone. This was not the frightened, cornered woman from the kitchen. This was Vivian in her element, a performance, with a hand-picked audience. She arrived with her own attorney, a man whose expensive, razor-sharp suit and shark-like smile were the physical opposite of Hales's rumpled tweed. This was a man from a big downtown firm, the kind that advertises on billboards, and she brought her entourage, her carefully curated shield of sympathetic allies. A nervous-looking woman I vaguely recognized as a cousin, an older woman from her church, clutching a large purse, who looked at me with open pity, and one of my father's former business partners, a man named Henderson, who I knew owed Vivian a significant number of favors. I sat across the long, polished table with Aunt Carol and Hales. We looked, by comparison, like a ragtag militia. I felt small. I felt outnumbered, exactly as she intended. But then I looked at the table in front of us. Hales had organized our evidence into a neat row of 5 thick manila folders, in a move of subtle psychological brilliance. Aunt Carol had, the night before, labeled each one, not in Hales's blocky print, but in a careful, elegant script, mimicking my mother's: Claire's trust, Mark's ledger, kitchen camera, notary affidavit, police report. It was as if my mother was sitting at the table with us. The meeting started with a suffocating, civil nicety that lasted about 30 seconds. Vivian's attorney, Mr. Bartlett, cleared his throat and began, his voice a smooth, condescending baritone aimed directly at Hales. "Mr. Hales, while we appreciate this informal gathering," he said, gesturing around the modest office as if it were a child's playpen, "my client is here to state, unequivocally, that she will not be bullied. Your clients," he gestured to me and Carol, "are clearly manufacturing grievances out of grief and, let's be frank, financial disappointment." He leaned forward, all feigned sincerity. "We are here to protect the express wishes of Mark Rowan, his updated estate plan, which he signed of his own free will, is clear. These attempts to overturn it, to question his capacity, are not only baseless, they are deeply cruel to a man in recovery. Mrs. Rowan is his wife, his protector, and she has been advised to take all necessary actions to stop this harassment." The church friend nodded sagely. The cousin looked down. Vivian, next to her attorney, was the picture of a wronged, dignified wife, dabbing at a dry eye with a tissue. Hales did not respond. He did not argue. He simply reached for the first folder, the one labeled Notary Affidavit. "Mr. Bartlett," Hales said, his voice as calm as a lecture, "I appreciate your position." He slid a single, stapled document across the table. It stopped directly in front of the attorney. "This is a copy of a sworn affidavit from Alex Pierce, the notary who witnessed the power of attorney your client obtained at Oakview Terrace. In it, Mr. Pierce testifies, under penalty of perjury, that he was paid $500 in cash, that he witnessed your client physically cover Mr. Rowan's hand, guiding his pen to forge a signature, all after Mr. Rowan, who was non-responsive, audibly asked, 'What is this?'" Bartlett's smile faltered. He snatched the document. Vivian went pale. Hales reached for the second folder, Mark's ledger. "This is a copy of Mr. Rowan's personal ledger, found in his home, with entries predating his heart attack. In it, he documents his own concerns, his own words. 'Not sure about this. Feels wrong.' In reference to financial transfers your client initiated, he also, helpfully, provided the password to his kitchen camera." He reached for the third folder, kitchen camera. He slid over a sheaf of glossy, time-stamped video stills. "Here is your client, Vivian Rowan, shredding legal mail from my office, a clear violation of state spoliation of evidence laws. Here she is yanking Mr. Rowan's arm in a manner that constitutes physical abuse. Here she is, on multiple occasions, pocketing cash from his wallet. Here she is coercing him to sign documents he clearly isn't reading. Bartlett was no longer smiling. He was shuffling papers, his face turning red. Vivian's cousin was staring, open-mouthed, at the photos. And finally, Hale said, tapping the last folder, police report. Here is the incident report filed by the police department, documenting the assault Mrs. Rowan committed against my other client. Ms. Ford, an assault I understand you witnessed. Ms. Rowan? He said, looking at Carol. This is slander, Bartlett roared, slapping the table. These are out of context. My client's security camera, on her own property. You're right, Hale said, cutting him off with that same terrible calm. Stills can be taken out of context. The full video is much clearer. He swiveled the large monitor on the conference wall so it faced them. He pressed a key on his laptop. The screen lit up, and there it was, my kitchen, my face, tired and pale. Vivian, sharp and cruel, the argument over the laundry, and then the sound, the sharp, wet smack of her hand on my face, so loud in the quiet room it made Vivian's church friend physically jump in her seat. They watched her hiss. They watched me fall into the towels. And then they watched Aunt Carol step in, her voice ringing with cold, righteous fury. If you're so eager to hit someone, Vivian, why don't you try that on me? Hale stopped the video. The screen went black. The room was dead still. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Vivian was staring at the black screen, her face a mask of chalky, abject horror. She had been exposed. Her slick attorney was, for the first time, speechless. It was the church friend, Brenda, who broke the silence. She was looking at Vivian, her face crumpled in confusion and hurt. Vivian, she whispered, her voice carrying across the entire room. Vivian, you told us she attacked you. You said she flew into a rage and you had to defend yourself. Vivian's carefully curated entourage, her wall of sympathetic allies, had just crumbled. The cousin wouldn't look at her. The business partner, Henderson, was suddenly fascinated by the ceiling tiles. And in that moment, with Vivian's lies exposed, Aunt Carol did the one thing I never expected. Jonathan, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Pause for a moment. She stood up. She wasn't looking at Vivian. She was looking at Vivian's allies. My name is Carol Monroe, Claire's sister, Annabelle's aunt. Her voice was raw, full of a shame I had never heard. What you saw, what Vivian did, was inexcusable. But I need to say something in this room. I need to admit my own failing. Vivian's attorney looked up, confused by this twist, sensing an opportunity. Years ago, Carol continued, right after my sister died, I signed a document giving Vivian limited authority over Mark's finances. I thought I was helping a grieving man. I was a fool, and I gave her the key. And when I saw what she was, when I confronted her and Mark, and he didn't listen, I walked away. I let my pride, and my anger at my brother-in-law for remarrying, cloud my judgment. I stayed away when I should have stayed and fought. I failed my sister, I failed my niece, and I failed Mark. She sat down. The confession hung in the air, changing the entire energy of the room. She wasn't playing a saint. She was shouldering her portion of the blame. It made her accusations, and our evidence, feel not less credible, but more, it made us human, and it made Vivian, who had admitted nothing, look like a monster. Before Vivian or her attorney could regroup, I took my cue. I reached into my own bag. For the original, folded letter from the attic, my mother's letter. My mother, Claire, I said, my voice shaking, but I didn't care. Knew this day might come. She wrote this, a note to her sister and her husband, right before she died. I unfolded the paper. I read her words aloud. If anything happens to me, please watch over Annabelle together. Mark is a good man, but he is soft, and he is lonely. Do not let money become the thing that breaks you. Do not let anyone come between you and my daughter, or between each other." I looked up from the page. Not at Vivian. I looked at Aunt Carol, and then I looked at my father's business partner, Henderson. My mother was afraid of exactly this, a fight over money, a broken family. "That is enough," Vivian finally exploded. Finding her voice, it was a shriek. "I will not be psychoanalyzed by this girl, or by her." She pointed at Carol. "Claire never trusted you. She never trusted you with money. She told me. She said you were irresponsible, that you were jealous. You're brainwashing Annabelle." It was her final, fatal lie. I didn't even have to speak. I just reached for the folder labeled Claire's Trust. I took out the original, heavy pages. I slid them across the table. They stopped in front of Vivian. I pointed to the line, Article 4, Section B. Intended trustee, Carol Monroe. Her lie, so specific, so venomous, was undone in 5 seconds. Vivian's attorney, Bartlett, saw the game was over. He started shuffling his papers, snapping his briefcase shut. "This conference is over. We will see you at the hearing. My client will not be slandered." "Wait," I said. They all stopped. I stood up. I looked at Vivian, not her attorney, not her cousin, her. I sat down. The silence that followed was heavier than the one after the video. Hales stood up, the librarian putting the books back on the shelf. "Thank you all for coming," he said, as if we'd just finished a pleasant tea. "Mr. Bartlett, you're right. This conference is over. Given your client's conduct, and her clear history of evidence destruction and manipulation, we will not be settling. We will proceed, not only with the petition for guardianship, but with a motion to suspend your client's authority immediately at the hearing. We will be asking the judge to have her removed from the house, pending the forensic accounting." Bartlett scoffed. "You don't have the grounds." "Oh, I think we do," Hales said, giving him a thin, cold smile. "What we've shown you today, gentlemen, ladies, these are just copies, for your convenience." He gestured to a large, old steamer trunk sitting against his office wall, one I hadn't even noticed. "The originals," he said, "are all in there, my trunk of truth, if you will. All of Claire's files, all of Mark's ledgers, all the data drives, all the originals, and it is ready to be wheeled into the courtroom and opened, piece by piece. If your client continues to contest one single thing, we will see you at the hearing." The guardianship and exploitation hearing did not take place in a grand wood-paneled hall of justice. It was a modest county courtroom, number 3B, with fluorescent lighting, scuffed beige walls, and the smell of stale coffee. It was not glamorous, but it was heavy with consequence. I sat at the petitioner's table, a cheap laminate surface, with Aunt Carol on my left and Jonathan Hales on my right. I wore my best-pressed scrubs. A quiet statement. This is who I am. A nurse, a caregiver, not a gold digger. Vivian sat at the opposing table. She was a work of art, a masterpiece of courtroom contrition. She wore a severe high-necked navy dress, her blonde hair pulled back into a modest bun. Her face was pale, her eyes downcast, a single, perfect tear poised on her cheek. Beside her, her shark of an attorney, Mr. Bartlett, looked expensive and annoyed to be in such a humble setting. The judge, Honorable Denise Lawson, was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and a sharper voice. She established a firm, no-nonsense tone from the first minute. "Good morning," she said, her voice cutting through the nervous quiet. "Let us be clear. This is not a forum for personal grudges or family feuds. This is a hearing to determine the welfare of one person. Mark Rowan, his safety, his health, and the integrity of his estate are the only things I care about today. Everything else is noise. Mr. Hales, you have the floor." Hales was a rock. He stood, not with a flourish, but with the steady certainty of a man who has already won. He introduced the evidence, not as a story, but as a series of methodical, undeniable facts. Your Honor, we have submitted the original, notarized trust deed, created by the decedent Claire Rowan, placing the family home in a protective trust for her daughter, my client, Ms. Ford, Exhibit A. We have submitted Mr. Rowan's own handwritten ledger, Exhibit B, which expresses his clear doubts and confusion over financial transfers being made by his wife, long before his cardiac event. We have submitted the sworn evaluation from Dr. Aris, the court-appointed neutral neurologist, Exhibit C, which notes significant cognitive impairment and vulnerability to suggestion in the weeks following his surgery, specifically on the dates key documents were signed. And we have submitted the sworn testimony of Mr. Alex Pierce, Exhibit D, the notary public, who testifies under oath that he witnessed Mrs. Rowan physically coerce her incapacitated husband's signature on the very power of attorney she is attempting to use today. Bartlett, Vivian's attorney, did his best. He was loud. He was smooth. He was indignant. He argued that the videos were spliced and taken wildly out of context. He painted Vivian as a harassed, loving wife. The slap, he claimed, was an unfortunate but isolated incident, a cry for help from a woman pushed to the brink by an ungrateful stepdaughter. The judge was visibly unmoved. She looked at Bartlett over the top of her glasses. A cry for help, Mr. Bartlett? Or an assault? I have also reviewed the staff notes from Oakview Terrace, which document Mrs. Rowan's persistent efforts to limit visitation from her husband's only child, and her direct interference with his medication schedule against doctors' recommendations. The isolated incidents seemed to be forming a pattern. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. My hands were shaking, but my voice, when it came, was steady. I recounted the laundry incident. I told them about the years-long pattern, the subtle and overt ways Vivian had cast me as help in my own family, the cheap blood insults. I told them about the deleted phone call to my aunt, and I told them about my last lucid conversation with my father. He gripped my hand, I said, my voice thick, but I would not cry. He looked at me, and he knew who I was, and he said, "I messed up, kiddo. Don't let her sell the house. It's yours." I looked at the judge. I am a critical care nurse. My entire life is about protecting vulnerable people. My father is the most vulnerable person I know. I don't want Vivian in prison. I don't wish her physical harm. I just want my father to be safe. Judge Lawson questioned me, her gaze intense. "Ms. Ford, if this court were to grant your petition, what is your plan for your father's care?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment. "My plan is to bring him home, to our house, the one he and my mother built. I will be taking a full leave of absence from my job. We will hire supplemental, bonded home health support, paid for out of my father's own accounts, which we will have secured. We will honor his wish to be in his home, and I will personally manage his care. We will reverse the drainage of his assets and place them in a new, court-supervised trust, ensuring his care for the rest of his life. And," I added, looking at Carol, "my aunt will co-sign on all financial decisions to ensure full transparency." It was clear. It was thoughtful. It was professional. It was the opposite of everything Vivian had done. Vivian also took the stand. It was a disaster for her. Under Hales's calm, methodical cross-examination, her mask of the long-suffering wife slipped, and the contemptuous, cruel woman I'd known all my life emerged. "You call your stepdaughter ungrateful," Hales said, his voice quiet. "She is," Vivian snapped, forgetting her demure performance. "She has no idea what I sacrificed. She just swooped in, expecting a handout." "And your husband," Hales continued, "you referred to his confusion, in your notes to the Oakview staff, as typical male helplessness. Is that correct?" "Well, he is," she said, her voice rising. "He's always been soft. He needs a firm hand. He needs me to handle things." "To handle his signature?" Hales asked. Bartlett objected. The judge overruled. Hales then played the video, not just the slap, the full, uncut, 5-minute clip. The argument, the insults, the sound of skin on skin, Aunt Carol's cold, furious line, and the arrival of the police, showing Vivian's panicked, lying face as she tried to spin the story. Judge Lawson watched the entire thing without blinking. When it was over, she noted, her voice dangerously quiet. "It appears to me, Mrs. Rowan, that you were more concerned about being filmed than you were about having just struck a person in your care. Even if that person is a legal adult, it speaks volumes." The trunk of truth moment was almost anticlimactic. Hales rolled in the physical evidence box, the old steamer trunk from his office. "Your Honor, we have the originals of all documents. Should Mr. Bartlett wish to contest their authenticity—" Judge Lawson held up a hand. She had reviewed enough. She had seen my mother's careful, loving, legal protections. She had seen my father's desperate, fading attempts to fight back. She had seen a clear, consistent pattern of intent, Claire's and Mark's, to protect me, long before Vivian ever entered the picture. Her ruling was swift and brutal. It was a clean cut. "This court finds in favor of the petitioners," she said, her voice echoing in the still room. "Effective immediately. The power of attorney dated yesterday is ruled fraudulent and void. Any and all other power of attorney documents naming Vivian Rowan are hereby suspended, temporary, leading to permanent co-guardianship of the person, and the estate of Mark Rowan is granted to Ms. Annabelle Ford and Ms. Carol Monroe." Vivian made a small, strangled sound. "This court," the judge continued, "orders a full forensic accounting of all bank accounts, investment portfolios, and credit lines controlled by Mrs. Rowan, joint or otherwise, going back 5 years. All assets will be frozen, pending that review." She looked at Vivian. She was no longer looking at a grieving wife. She was looking at a predator. As an additional condition, given the clear evidence of financial exploitation and the pending status of the trust, Mrs. Vivian Rowan is ordered to vacate the property at 2472 Maple Crest Drive within 30 days. Vivian's head snapped up. "Furthermore," the judge added, "she is prohibited from removing any items of property purchased before her marriage to Mr. Rowan, or any items purchased with funds from his accounts, unless she can prove, with a receipt, sole and separate ownership." It was the final, devastating blow. She was being stripped of the one thing she had murdered her soul for: the house, the furniture, the life. She was being erased, just as she had tried to erase me. In a final twist of character, a move that stunned even my aunt, I leaned forward and whispered to Hales. He nodded, a slow smile spreading on his face. He stood. "Your Honor, one final matter. My client, Ms. Ford, in a show of extraordinary grace, wishes to offer Mrs. Rowan a narrow path." He outlined the deal. We would offer Vivian a modest, legally documented settlement, $10,000, enough to secure a new apartment, on 3 conditions. 1. She signs a written, notarized acknowledgement of Mark's impaired consent on the fraudulent documents. 2. She withdraws all challenges to my mother's original trust, making it whole and uncontested. 3. She agrees, in writing, to stay away from Mark Rowan, except for supervised visits, if he requests them, which I knew he never would. Vivian, cornered, humiliated, her face a mask of toxic, undiluted rage, initially refused. "I will not," she spat at her attorney. But her attorney, seeing the judge's impatience and the mountain of evidence, knew a total loss when he saw one. He whispered urgently in her ear. He knew we were offering her a way to avoid civil and potentially criminal fraud charges. She finally signed the papers, her hand shaking. The tears came then, hot and real, but they were not tears of sadness. They were the tears of a tyrant who had just lost the war. Losing the fight, publicly, was her worst nightmare, and I had just made it come true. Outside the courthouse, a few curious locals and one stringer from the county paper lingered. I ignored them. My focus was on the man being wheeled out of a side door by a neutral aide from the facility. My father. He was in a wheelchair, but his eyes were clearer than I had seen them in months. The fog, the chemical fog Vivian had kept him in, was already lifting. I knelt by his chair, and he reached out, his hand frail, and squeezed mine. "Your mom," he whispered, his voice a dry rasp. "Your mom. She'd be proud." The story doesn't close on a grand epilogue, with Vivian in ruins, or my father miraculously healed. He's a sick man. He will always be a sick man. But it closes on a quiet, grounded scene. It's weeks later. I'm in the kitchen. The house is quiet, but it's a peaceful quiet. The late afternoon sun streams in. The only sound is the soft, rhythmic tumbling of the old washing machine. I am folding laundry. I am folding my father's clothes, and my own, and they are mixed together in the basket. There is no voice shouting at me. There is no hand raised. Aunt Carol, who has moved into the guest room for a while, leans in the doorway. She's holding 2 cups of tea. "You know," she says, her voice dry, "if anyone ever hits you over laundry again, they're answering to both of us and a very cranky judge." I look at the folded towels, at the sunlight hitting the floor, at the woman who had, in her own way, saved me, and I smile, a real smile. I realize my revenge was never about hurting Vivian. It was never about the money or the house. It was about making sure that in this family and in this house, the truth, my mother's truth, my truth, finally outlasts the lies. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below and let us know where you're listening from. We love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.